Hi, happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of TGIK, live here from the Heptio studios in Seattle, Washington. And our Mount Charlie update for the day is Mount Charlie is out and happy, and you're looking really great today. We have sunshine, and it's exciting. We're starting to get back to like that time of year where like the sun's coming out more and more. It's like really good. Okay, so everybody's favorite part of the day. Let's see who's here and what's going on in chat. So Bob was our first one today. Hi, Bob. Good to see you. Greetings from Hollywood, California. Felipe, hello from Paris. George says, hi, everyone. I'll be helping Kris today. Welcome. We'll get started in about 7 minutes. Thanks for helping out, George. Me, George, and Joe were just hanging out doing like the preview that we do before TGIK, and it's like behind the scenes, so we got to have like some bonding time, so that was exciting. Martine, hello from the Netherlands. Good to see you, Martin. Hello from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Lamatti, always here. Good to see you, Lamatti. Happy Friday. Hello, all from London. I'll be in London soon. I think I have 2 talks in London coming up. One for the Skills Matter, and then I think there's another, I think an O'Reilly conference or something. Hello from Cape Town, South Africa. Hello from Athens, Greece. We don't see Greece very much. Thank you for joining. It's got to be super late there. Hello from Michigan. That's where George is. Luis says, hello. Welcome, Constantinos. Glad to have you join us. My pleasure. Okay. Hello from Belgrade. Hi, everyone from Seattle. That's Sean. George is saying, as usual, we'll keep the notes in the HackMD. You're welcome to contribute, so we'll pull that up in a second. Brian Lyle says, hi, Kris. Long time no see. Hey, Brian, it's good to see you again. I hope things are well over there on the East Coast. I'll be heading out to Baltimore, I think, for a meetup in next month or the month after. I think that's your neck of the woods, so if you want to hang, let me know. Tim Pepper says hi from sunny Portland, Oregon. Boss Bank says hi from Lagos, Nigeria. Lamatti, do you have a topic picked out for next week? If not, do a TGIK on managing Kubernetes, logs, and cool solutions to play with. So I almost did that this week. Okay, so like a little bit of backstory here. I was helping a friend debug Spark and Kubernetes, and they were like, there's like 30 different pods running with all different pod names, and they're trying to like look for a string in all the pods. And I was like, there's got to be an easier way than like going one in pod at a time and doing logs and logs and logs. So we like started to talk more about getting logs and Elasticsearch up and running. Joe already did a TGIK on the Elasticsearch operator, but I still think it would be really fun to do like needle in a haystack, let's go play with logs and like look at all the different tools for logging for an episode of TGIK. I think that's a really good idea. Yay, Nicholas is here. Ha. Hi.
It's your weekly beer fairy.
Yeah, thanks. You want to tell people hi?
So, I will. It's me again.
Hi. Like we're like half of the office here today in Seattle.
No, for real.
For real. So yeah, Nicholas is nice enough to bring me a beer again this week. So I'm excited about that. And I also have my M&Ms as per usual. But yeah, Lamatti, logs. I think it's a great idea. I totally think we should jump into it. I don't know if we want to do Elasticsearch again, but if anybody has any ideas, feel free to drop them in either the docs or the issue tracker that we have in GitHub. Let's see. Next, we have Bosky. Hello from Palo Alto. We have Mike. Greetings from New Jersey. And I think I'm all caught up saying hello to everyone. So hi, welcome. This week, we're going to be talking about MicroK8s, which I just got up and running for the first time earlier this morning. And I think we're going to be able to spend a lot of time today talking about kind of how Kubernetes works and maybe playing with some different Linux distributions. So right now, MicroK8s works on Ubuntu, but I also think I want to try it out on Arch. If anybody else has a distro they want me to play with, feel free to drop it in the chat and I can fire up a third EC2 instance and we can try it on a different Linux distro. And in the meantime, while folks are coming up with exciting Linux distros to have me play with, we can go ahead and jump into everybody's favorite part this week in Kubernetes. So let's go here. And here we have the HackMD that George put in the chat earlier. And it's got like a link to the video and table of contents George is nice enough to help us out with. So let's see what's going on this week. So I have been coming into these more and more blind every week, and I actually feel like it makes them a little bit better because I kind of am reading these and figuring these out as we go, as folks are also doing it too. Oh, we have more people in the chat. George says, I will file an issue and give you all a link to the feedback with regard to an episode for logs. Thank you, George. Mohammed says hello from India. Tega says hello from Atlanta. Lamatti says CentOS. You're actually not the first person to suggest Cent. But yeah, we can do Cent. I'm fine with that. I mean, I think there's Rel too, which is pretty much the same thing, but Cent sounds like more fun. Louis says, I saw some colleagues struggling with MicroK8s and Snap this week. Some read-only problems for kube config. Interesting. We'll see if we can't maybe try to replicate those and see if we can't help out. If you want to share more information on that, Louis, I can try to do an assist. Okay, so anyway, this week in review. So this looks like what is this? What do we have here? Blindly clicking links live on TGIK. Okay, so this is a Kubernetes issue. It adds support to CSI volume expansion. So this was merged. Okay, so I think what's going on here is George is saying this is an exciting new feature that was just merged into master, which getting merged into master doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to make it into the next release, I don't think. And it also doesn't mean that it's like ready and available right now. But it is exciting because that means that they went through the Kubernetes PR process, and that can be a lot of fun if you've never gone through it before and you want somebody to help out. Hit me up, I'm happy to help. Matt says, saw the same read-only issues. Okay, yeah, so now you have my attention. What are these read-only issues that y'all are talking about? Is there a link somewhere or something I can find out more about it? And then also, which distro were you using? And if so, if you were using Ubuntu, which version of Ubuntu were you using? Because I'll try to spin one of those up as well. Okay, so cool. So this just adds CSI volume expansion. Adds support for Node CSI. I do like to go look at code. This is just me, though. Oh, Kubernetes code. It's always so pretty and well commented. Nice. Okay, so just adding a few new functions. People had some questions. Nothing too insane, it doesn't look like. Happy new feature. So congratulations on that. Looks like we have another PR. Let's pull this up and see what we got going on. I don't know why my internet's going slow today. Somebody must have canceled the internet. This PR adds a latency histogram for the metric custom resource conversion webhook calls. Oh, I love a good graph. It records the name of the parent CRD and from versions observation as a label. Okay, cool. So this is just adding a histogram metric. So this should be a pretty simple PR. Okay, so a few changes to the build file. Nothing crazy. Changed a variable name from unsafe to converter. That's really good. That makes me happy. Also reminds me of Francesc's favorite way to import the unsafe package in Go is to alias it to tote safe. So you can say tote safe pointer. Unstruct in, unstruct out. Okay, so yeah, this is just a pretty simple PR. And it looks like we have some tests down here. This is one of my favorite ways of writing tests in Go. So I think it was 2 or 3 years ago at GopherCon in Denver, Mitchell Hashimoto from HashiCorp, I said that right, gave a really great talk on this pattern in Go for testing, where you define all your tests in sort of this giant block format here. It's really handy. You're starting to see it more and more. If you don't have a chance to see that talk, you should go check it out, and it actually gives you some really good examples of how to write the test like this. It's pretty exciting. So this is another great PR. Thanks for sharing. Other interesting stuff, KubeCon EU scholarship is up. Oh, this is exciting. I actually think I got an email about this that I might have forgot to read. San Francisco, California, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation integrates open source. This message is held for review. Looks like people are in chat. Kevin added a YouTube video. I'm assuming that's Mitchell's talk that he added. And Philippe also added something. News and Frankfy, the French translation team, is up and translating the K8s talk. Interesting. So yeah, this is the scholarship for, Cloud Native Computing Foundation announced schedule for KubeCon. Got you. So this isn't the scholarship, it's the schedule. I was thinking this was the diversity scholarship, but I want to see, how do we actually get to the KubeCon schedule? Because this is really fun. I think there's a link to it later. We'll try to pull it up in a second. Let's move on. So many talks that ended up, many were rejected. So there's this new thing called the Reject Conference. So I think Amy Chen, one of our engineers here, tweeted about this earlier this week. This is actually a conference that's sort of like the opposite of KubeCon. Or not the opposite, but it's just a place where you can take your KubeCon talk if you didn't get accepted, and you can go here and present your talk. I know a lot of really great, really, really smart, talented engineers who put a lot of work into their CFPs just to have them rejected. And this is a chance for a lot of that work to come through and for them to still get to give their talk. So if you want to come do a talk here, you want some help, let me know if I can help. Ping us, hit me up on Slack. We can do our best to help you out here and get you speaking somewhere about Kubernetes. Okay, cool. So you can register here for the Reject Conf. Let's see what people are saying. There's a GopherCon talk, advanced testing with Go. Yeah, that's the GopherCon talk. Yeah, that's right. Sean Smith says the Reject Conference is a good idea. Brian Lyle says there were 1,535 talks submitted, and we only have 3 days. It is very difficult to pick the talks this year, so please submit to Cloud Native Rejects. Yeah, Brian was really, really awesome and helped out with the conferences go around. So we can all thank Brian for his hard work and for putting together an awesome conference for us. And he brings up a really fantastic point, 1,500 CFPs. So if 1,500 CFPs, each one took 10 to 15 minutes to review, I mean, I'm not on a calculator, but somebody can crunch the numbers. That's a lot of time and a lot of energy to put into reviewing these. So like, very, very grateful for Brian and folks who helped reviewing these. I've done a couple of conference reviews, and it is just a ton of work. And a lot of folks don't realize how much work goes into it. So very, very grateful for all the hard work that Brian has done. So George says, here's the schedule. I fixed the notes. Okay, so let's pull this up. Get it up here. Okay, so here's the schedule. So a couple things about the schedule here, because it's kind of, how do I say this correctly? It's kind of interesting. There are some unique features to this schedule. You can do a grep and just like look for the name of the talk you want to see. So here's Kris Nova at Heptio. Oh, this is from last KubeCon, George. For KubeCon EU. Let's see. Okay, because that was a talk I already gave. So for KubeCon EU, it's here, and so now we can grep for Kris. There we go. And you click on the talk you want to see. Now, don't be fooled into copying this link if you want to share your talk with someone. You actually have to come in here and copy this link, because if you just copy this one and you paste it in, you're just going to go back to the main schedule again. So make sure that if you are sharing talks with other folks, that you're actually coming in and grabbing this link here. And you can come in and you can like sign up and sign in with Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and you can like set your profile pic and type up like a thing about you, and you can even come down to the bottom and give feedback and like put together your schedule, and we can see like all the people who are like plan on coming to the talk. So it's kind of exciting. If you're coming to KubeCon, this is a good place to start hanging out and putting things together and checking out people's talks. And again, all the KubeCon talks are recorded. So after the conference, there's usually this big rush of people watching all the KubeCon talks and learning about exciting new things. Let's see what we have in the chat here. Bosky says, KubeCon EU. Yeah, Sean says, thank you, Brian. George says, thanks for the correction, Bosky. Okay, cool. And on that note, I am going to, what do I want? Beer or Diet Coke? Decisions. I'm going to go Diet Coke. We'll get into the beer after we start hacking on Linux. Okay. Oh, perfect. Natural segue from KubeCon schedule to this talk. So a couple of months ago, I messaged you on Slack. I'm like, hey, I have an idea for a KubeCon talk. We should go do like a high-level review of TGI and what's been going on. And we should talk about like what the production is like and what we learned and how it's evolved over time. And so we're giving this talk called 2 Years of TGI Kubernetes. I think this is the first time Joe and I are going to be on stage together. So it's actually going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't seen us hang out in the same room together, our energy is fantastic together. And we're just going to be talking about TGI. So if you have questions, you've ever wondered anything, we love feedback. We love to hear from folks. Let us know. We can incorporate it into our talk, and it will be recorded, and it'll be shared after the conference. So this is really exciting that Joe and I get to go do a talk together at KubeCon EU. So let's see what George says. George says, thanks for the correction. Notes are fixed again. Those of you who are just joining, you can check out the notes here. Maddie says, double fist it. Like, okay. Decent article on Airbnb wrangling workflow. What have we here? How Airbnb simplified the Kubernetes workflow for 1,000+ engineers. Oh, this is cool. So this was at KubeCon. So KubeCon is a conference. They have a couple of them all over the world. And it's completely feedback driven. So it's an interesting conference. I think they have one in California, and there's like one in South America somewhere. There's one in Europe, and they happen every year. So they created this thing called KubeGen. It's an internal tool for Airbnb that can take services parameters defined in a single YAML file and generate the full Kubernetes service config by adding all the necessary boilerplate configuration. Okay, cool. So it's just an abstraction on top of Kubernetes and applications within it. Maddie says double fist at one drink in each hand. Guess that's the Southernism. No, I just wasn't thinking about the beer because of the weird YouTube delay where I say something and then y'all, I don't get to hear feedback about what I just said until about 30 seconds later. So my Nova brain had moved on to other things and I was not even thinking about the beer and the Diet Coke anymore. So yeah, it'll generate K8s configs and then you can do a kubectl apply and that turns into a Kubernetes cluster. So this is cool because if you look, here are the Kubernetes configurations. So these are the YAML files that we usually look at here in TGIK, and these are the Kubernetes native objects. And then over here on the left, we have these high-level abstractions that you can use to generate these Kubernetes objects. So this is exciting, and then that of course turns into a Kubernetes cluster. Sean Smith says, yeah, I think I saw Airbnb talk about it somewhere else. I didn't go to the conference. It looks cool. And then Hippie Hacker, hi from New Zealand. Hi, Hippie Hacker. Good to see you. New Zealand, that is an exciting place. I cannot wait to go to New Zealand. I really, really, really want to do the north side of Mount Cook, but that is going to require a helicopter to get in. So maybe one day. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I've always kind of had my heart set on New Zealand, especially after watching Lord of the Rings. Okay, so this is the Airbnb tool. Shout out to Steve Sloka for a write-up on Sonaboy and K8s conformance. So Steve's one of our engineers here, and Sonaboy is one of our tools here at VMware. And Sonaboy is it's a conformance checker. So it doesn't test your Kubernetes cluster. It just validates that it's what we call conformance. And the CNCF adopted this tool as the official way of defining what a conforming cluster is and isn't. So that's exciting. There are many ways to create Kubernetes clusters, and many environments can host them. Okay, so I think this is just kind of a more detailed run-through of kind of what I just said. So feel free to come check this out. I don't want to spoil it for too many folks. But yeah, here's that certified conformance program that I was just talking about. And you can see that you can get this special badge you can add to your repo. It's a conformant cluster just by doing a Sonaboy run. So this is really rad. Let's see, Tim Pepper says, Melanie, Airbnb. Oh, that one's not done yet. So George, all of the links that people are dropping, I'm going to let you either approve or reject those, and I'm just going to keep moving on. But Tim Pepper just dropped a link. I think it got approved, yay. And Jan says, hello from Palo Alto. Hi, I will be there next month. Okay, shout out to the Upstream K8s Slack admin team for getting slack.k8s.io opened up for registrations again. So yeah, this was shut down. Somebody messaged me on Twitter the other day and was like, hey, do you have any idea why I can't register for Kubernetes Slack? And just to let me see if I can't do this really quick. I don't want to pull up our work Slack, but here, we're in the Kubernetes one here. Oh, hold on. Let's open up kind. We can see that there's several thousand people here. If we go to, what is it, Kubernetes dev, 4,100 Kubernetes users, 58,435 people in this one channel alone. So Kubernetes Slack is a huge, huge, huge deal. I think it's one of the biggest Slack interfaces on the internet. George says, keep on dropping links. Also feel to drop them in the document. Waleed says, when you run a conformant test, what does it mean? That tasks skipped while test performed, and one K8s implementation passes less or more than others. If I'm understanding your question correct, Waleed, you're basically asking what happens and why would we ever skip a test, and then what happens if a Kubernetes cluster passes more or less than the other ones. So basically, the conformity is just a way of saying that you are running a more authentic version of the Kubernetes components. You'll see a lot of people, they'll bring their own components to the table. There's nothing in Kubernetes that says you have to have a kubelet running. In fact, the virtual kubelet is a fantastic example of this, where you could technically build a Kubernetes cluster that doesn't have the Kubernetes kubelet installed, but instead has this third-party kubelet that like vendors things out to this other service somewhere. So you can sort of like, if you wanted to, which pros and cons to this approach, but you could like pick and pull pieces of Kubernetes in and out. And all conformance does is it just says, yes, your cluster behaves how we expect a Kubernetes cluster to behave and does all the things we expect a Kubernetes cluster to do. So that's a little bit more unconformance there. So George says Kubernetes user is what you're looking for. Yeah, George is like, oh yeah, I know this channel. All right. Okay. So yeah, here's our community moderators. That's exciting. And YTT, the YAML templating tool. So we looked at this one last week, but we'll mention it again. They tweeted at me and said thanks. But I got into this a little bit last week, and this is just a new way of sort of annotating and adding various bits of logic to YAML. So yet another markup language on a markup language. So yeah, if you're interested in this, or if you catch yourself in a situation where you're constantly like defining variables or setting things in, like SED, like the Linux term said, I just verbed that, setting things into your YAML or using a tool like Helm, this might actually be something that you might find exciting because you could probably take this library and build a pretty advanced custom tool for manipulating and mutating your YAML. Before it goes over to the Kubernetes side of things. So YTT, the YAML templating tool. And I think it does more than just YAML too. I want to say it does JSON, I thought I remember reading. While domain-specific languages like JSONnet, okay, so this is basically JSONnet for YAML, which is exciting. Okay, cool. Where are we? YTT. Okay, so here's Mitchell's talk. So this is actually cool. I was in the audience for this one. Let's see if we can find an example of this really quick. Yeah, right here. So if you look, he's got examples of how he's defining various test cases up here, where he literally defines various structs and then just ranges over the structs and then performs his test here. So you can define all your test cases up here nice and neat and pretty, and you can see all of them. And then you just have this like sort of smaller system at the bottom that is actually going to just loop over those structs and perform various tests on them. So this is a fantastic pattern, and you're starting to see it more and more, and I can't stress this enough. If you're writing Go tests, come check this out. It's a really great way of writing tests. Okay, that's EOF. End of my testing rant for the day. So next up, developing Kubernetes services at Airbnb scale. Okay, so this is the talk that folks were talking about in chat. So this is KubeGen, the blog we just looked at a moment ago. So if you want to come watch either of those talks, those are in here. And then I think next week sometime we will actually merge this Markdown file into the github.com/heptio/tgik repository. Let's see what folks are saying. Bob says, FYI, added a link to Hashimoto's talk. Thank you, Bob. Kevin says, anyone using VS Code with the Go extension, it can auto-generate the framework for the table-driven tests. Oh, that's cool. So VS Code will just do the boilerplate for you. It's super awesome. I use Go, or I think it used to be called GoLend. Now it's called Goglend. And it's this IDE here. Right now, I think on this computer my Emacs works, but it's not working on my other laptop. I know, Emacs problems. But yeah, I don't have VS Code installed, but I use GoLand is what it's called. And that's what I use to work on all of my Go stuff. But I do know a lot of folks who use VS Code. When I was at Microsoft, everybody used it there, and it's got a really, really slick plugin system. So building things like creating custom plugins, or like this example here where it'll auto-generate stuff for you, is relatively simple to do. Hippie Hacker from New Zealand. Chris, are you using Spacemacs with likely a well-thought-out config? Is your config publicly available? So while we're here, let's see if we have the good laptop or not. Okay, so this is my Emacs. Kris Nova, it's installing some packages, and then it yelled at me. Cannot load file, but I think we can still, what do we want to do here? Split window right, 2, and then we can just close out of here. Okay, yeah, so as far as my Spacemacs goes, I'm showing you all of my secret sauce here. I do have this. It is not publicly available because I have a private Git repository that I run at my house that has my home directory synced to it, so that whenever I move into a new computer, I can just pull down my home and all my .dot files and all of my fancy scripts, and I have like a bin directory there that I add to path. But if we want, I can throw this up on GitHub and host it for folks whenever I get off the air here. Louise says, I went back to Vim Go, but don't want to start a flame war. I know a lot of people who use Vim Go. I just, don't hate me, but like I never really learned to use Vim. I've just always been an Emacs girl. And then like got into the fancy IDEs when I was writing Java and Scala. And then the second I figured out you could have that for Go, I was like, I'm done. I just want to be able to look stuff up and tab hint a lot of things. But if I am like doing like a live demo or something, I'll usually do split screen in Emacs. That's usually my preferred way. George says, if you see Kris at KubeCon, ask her about her custom Arch config. Don't ask me about my custom Arch config. If you've been watching or following along with me in the evenings, I've been doing World of Warcraft live streaming on Arch Linux, and it's pretty old school. I'm not gonna lie, like my whole computer is ancient. It's got really great hardware, but all of like the terminals, like the actual real monitors are like I think 15 years old or something. It's really adorable. I love it. Yuri says, hello Kris, I want to join the community and become a committer. Any tips? First off, welcome. Kubernetes is awesome. So yeah, if you want to join the community, and George, I knew George was going to beat me to it. Yuri, have you seen the contributor guide? So yeah, let's pull this up really quick. So here's the contributor guide. This is pretty accurate, but there's also a lot going on here. So if you want like the 10 seconds how to get started in Kubernetes, here's what you really need to know. Go to slack.k8s.io, go here, create a new account, right? After you get that, you can log into the Kubernetes Slack, which looks like this. Here's the Kubernetes users. And then you can come in here and you can like introduce yourself. So we'll just do this, hi from TGIK. And you can start to join all of the different Kubernetes SIGs and all of these channels over here on the left. And to see that, if you go to the community repo, which we can add a link for this as well, github.com/Kubernetes/community. This is like where your personal choices are going to start to matter. So come in here and just skim through these, and my best advice to you is just pick one. Find one that looks exciting, that's like something that you would enjoy working on, maybe something that is relevant to you and your team at work, something that you find interesting, something you want to learn more about, whatever, and find one of these. They're called SIGs. They stand for Special Interest Groups. I'm involved with a handful of them. SIG cluster lifecycle is probably the easiest one to talk about. And this whole SIG, the entire thing that we focus on is the life cycle of a Kubernetes cluster. How do you create a cluster? How do you manage it after it's been created? How do you ultimately destroy it? How do we track this over time? And it's a group of people, and we get together, and that's all we work on. And then we have like projects within projects, and we have meetings, and it's like totally structured. But at the end of the day, this is where you want to start. You want to introduce yourself. You want to get to know whoever the chairs are. These are going to be the folks that can like sort of help you get started. So if you wanted to join SIG Cluster Lifecycle, hit up Robert Bailey. Although I think he might have, anyway, or Lucas or Tim. These are all really great people. Tim, he works with me here at VMware, which I think I need to come in and update my thing too. That reminds me, I need to do that. But yeah, track down these folks, hit them up on Slack, bother them. That's why we're here. And then we can help you get started and explain some of the more specific details of each special interest group. So that's a really good way of getting started. George says, we just opened a contributor playground too. You can practice doing PRs in a sandbox and everything is quite cool. Awesome. So that's like if you want to start working on Kubernetes, come and join. It's not scary. I remember the first like SIG meeting I ever joined. Like my screen was black. I hid myself from everyone. I didn't say a word. It took me like 3 months before I was brave enough to finally say something. Everybody's really cool. Just come, hang out, introduce yourself. Feel free to chime in. We welcome newcomers. It's one of the main reasons not only I started contributing to Kubernetes, but I've continued to contribute to Kubernetes for the past 2 years because the community is just so awesome. Really solid people. So Ashish says, Tim is better. Robert moved to a different project. Our company-wide Spacemax config. So, okay, so here's Hippie Hacker. I want to see New Zealand Spacemax. That sounds like something I would be interested in. Okay, so build and install Emacs. I already love this. I already am in love. Step 2, go to temp Emacs, make install, Emacs version, get clone, configure Emacs. Yeah, and this is what I do too. I have another repo that's also private that I just have as a Git submodule in my home directory repo. And then I just expand that and then poof, Emacs. But yeah, I've just been slowly writing eLisp in that directory for like the past 6 years. So like, take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, so this is exciting if you're an Emacs user. Okay, so let's go back here. Yuri says, thanks, George. I will take a look. Sean says, got to run to a meeting. See you all later and have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining, Sean. We'll see you next time. And as always, this will be on YouTube after we are done with the live broadcast here. Okay, so MicroK8s. Where do we want to start? Let's start here. This is what I want to do. So if you come down here, you can see at the bottom in the reference links, we have MicroK8s docs, and then we have MicroK8s on Slack. So actually, let's join that. Channels, MicroK8s, join. And then I'm going to wave. And if we have any questions, we can just message people there. We should probably start talking about Kubernetes at some point. No, that's okay. We can get off in the weeds. It's all right. That's why everybody's here. We all just want to have a good time. Louis says, I remember you can even play MP3 or do IRC inside Emacs. Oh, yeah. I've got GChat for Hangouts in my Emacs at home. It's pretty exciting. But I used to have IRC in there as well, back when I actually would hang out on my IRC server, which is still up and running. So if you want to join, you're welcome to. I just don't hang out there anymore. So let's go to the MicroK8s documentation. Okay, so a little bit of like prior art here, or like how we ended up on MicroK8s for the week. I did TGI live at KubeCon Seattle, where I did Kubernetes and Docker and how to write Go tests against Kubernetes and Docker. And that was really successful, and then we came back and we did a real TGI on it later. And I remember somebody mentioning this to me, but I didn't like check it out or investigate very thoroughly afterwards. Somebody else mentioned this on Twitter, and I was like, okay, this is the second time I've heard about it. Let's go check this thing out. So I get here, and it's like, get it from the Snap store. This is the first time I've ever heard of Snap, which I'm assuming stands for Synaptic Package Manager, which is what APT used to be, or apt-get if you're an Ubuntu user. And I think the Snap store is just kind of like the Ubuntu repositories. So it's the new install tool. So it's all the hotness, and we're going to look at it here in a second. But if you come down here under features, you can see that like it supports Istio out of the box. There's daily builds. You can do local storage. You can upgrade your cluster. You can update your cluster. It gives you metrics. It gives you kubedns. And then, oh, it's conformant. That's why we have the certified Kubernetes logo here. So we know it's a Kubernetes certified cluster that was certified with Sunabloy, which is that tool we looked at earlier. So single node Kubernetes done right. It's 0 ops K8s on just about any Linux box. We're going to put this to the test today and see if we can't get Kubernetes running on Arch Linux. Let's see. Kevin says static compilation for dynamic packages. I think Kevin's talking basically what Snap does. Okay, cool. So static compilation for dynamic packages. That's interesting. I just thought this was sort of like the new apt-get updates, but it's cool. So anyway, you can come here. It's made by Canonical, which these are the same folks who do Ubuntu, which explains why you use Snap to install it. So George says, Snap isn't synaptic, it's a different thing. Okay, so my assumptions were wrong. Thank you for letting me know. So first things first, let's go to EC2 here. And let's do a refresh. And I think I can delete this VPC. Nope, we'll come do this later. Okay, so we'll just go to EC2. We have 0 running instances. Yay! I just terminated this one. Don't tell anyone I left an instance up for a week. I'm sorry. Amazon Linux, what do we want here? So we want Ubuntu. So here's Ubuntu Server 18.04 LTS. I think this is what we want. We want x86 64. Yeah, happy pandas. Let's do T2 large. I mean, we're going to be running Kubernetes, right? Let's see, what do we want to do here? Previous, okay, select an existing group. Okay, actually, I want to create a new one, and this will make a little bit more sense later, but we're going to call this one MicroK8s. And we're going to open up port 22 so I can SSH into it. And we're also going to open up port 8080, which is the port.
You were saying?
Oh, Siri just opened. I hate the Siri button on my MacBook, which is the port that Kubernetes will be listening on. So we can actually hit that publicly, and we can actually use all of my good K8s tools here to talk to our cluster. It might be fun to play with that and actually expose this thing and see if we can't break some stuff. Okay, so review and launch. We want to get, what is this warning? Rules with source, allow all IP addresses. Yes, that's fine. Review and launch. Yes, maybe? Oh, a description is required. I'll just do MicroK8s again. Now review and launch. Okay, there we go. And launch. We're going to use Kris Nova. Where is this thing at? Right there. And launch instance. Calvin says hello from Canonical with cool sunglasses. Jan asks if this is like Minikube. Yes, Jan, this is similar to Minikube in what the problem that we're trying to solve, but it does it in a distinctly different way, and we're going to look at that in a little bit. The TLDR, the basic rundown here is Minikube starts up a virtual machine, and then inside of that virtual machine is where all the Kubernetes components go, and then you just poke a hole in that virtual machine's network, and then you can access it from your local, whereas this is a little more a little more pure, a little more authentic, and actually just runs the packages directly on your computer without that virtual machine in between. There's pros and cons to both. But this is just how this one works. And we'll talk more about those pros and cons and how it compares to Minikube and how it compares to Kubernetes in Docker or Kind as we start to kind of jump into it and we look at what's going on and we actually pull the process list and see how things are running. But it's pretty interesting. If you're a Linux user, it was a bit like, whoa, did this really just work the first time? And sure enough, it did. It was kind of cool. So Waleed says, Snap is a Linux packaging like containers. Snap works across Linux and distributions or versions, bundle your dependencies and assets, simplifying installs to a single standard command. There you have it. That's Snap in a snap. I'm killing it today. Okay, so view instances. So we got our Ubuntu one up and running. So now is when we're going to actually put this to the test. Let's do a different one, and let's look for Arch Linux. Aw, is there not? Here's the marketplace. Here's Sent. Somebody said Sent. But can we just get Arch Linux? No? Let me try. Arch. And I say Arch, I don't say Arc. Don't hate me. No, I'm not seeing it anywhere. Community AMIs, maybe. Arch. Architecture. Elasticsearch. We might not be able to do Arch, which would be really sad. Let's try one word, Arch Linux. Arch Linux EC2 image, yes, we found one. Okay, cool. Yeah, just gonna blindly run, this random AMI I just found. So we'll do an M3 large. Didn't Arch Linux move to Snapd? I don't know. I have an ancient version of Arch that I keep the packages updated, but I rolled my own kernel years ago that I've been running for a couple of reasons. And I still get to use Pacman, which is my favorite package manager because it's Pacman. So yeah, so Tim says Snapcraft for more information on snaps. Didn't Arch Linux move to Snapd? Already talked about that. Calvin says the MicroK8 snap also works on ARM64, including Raspberry Pi. Steve says XKCD. Do I want to open this, Steve? I don't know if I want to open this live on the air, but Steve put an XKCD in here. And John says Icarus, no, but it moved from one place to a different one, not the Arch guy at Snapd. So I think I know which XKCD Steve did, which is the one where it's like we have 15 standards. Yeah, this is it. And then I'll tell a funny story about this as well. XKCD, it's like a nerd comic. If you're into like math and computer programming, these are like some really fun little comics that are relevant throughout your workday. Situation, there are 14 competing standards. 14 ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard. Situation, now there are 15 standards. When I proposed Cluster API, the first email I wrote to the SIG, one of the main engineers and architects of Kubernetes replied just with a link to that comment only. So that was exciting when I was trying to fight for Cluster API and nobody believed me or wanted to do it. And Louis says, XKCD is amazing. John says, but the instructions are on snappedcraft.io for Arch are current. Our docs guy runs Arch. Okay. Well, our advocacy girl runs Arch too. All right, let's close some of this stuff. And get back to MicroK8s. Okay. So let's go here, review and launch. Previous, we want to go to select an existing MicroK8s. Bam. I'm just going quickly on this one, but I'm just basically doing the same thing I did for the last one, just to kind of speed things along here. Okay, so we got Arch up and running. We got Ubuntu. If we want to do a third one, we totally can, but this should be enough for us to get started. Okay, so where's our Ubuntu one? So this thing is up and running. Let's grab this. And let me get out of there. Oh, here's like the Linux one-liner of today. If you just do cd with no args, it actually takes you to whatever you have defined for home, which is that variable there. So if I am like in my root directory, print working directory, I'm in root, and then I can just do cd, and then poof, I'm in users Nova. So if you just want to get back to your home directory really quick, it's less keystrokes than that. You can just do that. Handy dandy CD hackery for today. Okay, so anyway, let's SSH Ubuntu and let's paste in our public IP address for our Ubuntu instance we just created. Yes. And here we go. So what is it? LSB release, right? How do you get the Ubuntu version number? I thought it was LSB release. Is it like -R maybe? Yeah, there we go. Release 18.04. So we're running 18.04 here. Well, lots of people in chat. Let me see what's going on here. There's docs.snapcraft installer for reference. George says, John or Tim, is there another Snapty distro we should try now? And somebody said -A, which I think is -all, but we just did -R for release. Okay, so we're running 18.04, and I think Ubuntu ships with snap out of the box. So yeah, the snap command lets you install, configure, refresh, and remove snaps, which I think a snap is just like a package, right? Next line, snaps are packages that work across many different Linux distros, enabling secure delivery and operation of the latest apps and utilities. So you can come in and you can see this is very similar to other commands, not a Go library, but close. And you can see all the different secondary words. You can use snap refresh or snap get or snap set or login, or there's a lot of stuff you could do here. All right, let's do Diet Coke. Okay, cool. So if we go to the MicroK8s documentation, which is microk8s.io, come in here to docs, and then here is just like the very first one you come to is just getting it up and running. And we're going to kind of go through this together today and look at some of the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So the first thing it says is you can either do snap install MicroK8s Classic, or Snap has this thing called channels, which basically are like versions, just called something else, and you can do channel is equal to 1.2 stable. And then Duffy had a list of, a list of all the available channels. I don't know how he got that list. But if anybody can find all of the available channels for MicroK8s or give me a command, maybe we can do like a snap MicroK8s list or something, so we can see all of the different channels. And there's different versions of Kubernetes we could install, which is cool, especially if you plan on testing your code or testing your application against different versions of Kubernetes. That's when this is going to get really exciting. John says, George, I'm just back from a run and found about this from IRC. I'm not all here. George says, good to see you. It's been a while. Thanks for joining. John says, likewise. Hope you're doing all right. I'm assuming this means George went into the Ubuntu IRC and was like, hey, we're doing snapd or whatever. Kevin says, scroll down on the homepage for the list. Okay. MicroK8 status. So let's go back here. Scroll down on the home page. Aha, here it is. Okay, so yeah, we're up to 1.13. We have 1.12, 11, version 10. We have a lot of the later versions of version 10, which Kubernetes 1.10 was. That was a good release. Anyway, so we're gonna run, which one do we want to run? Let's do 1.13 stable because 1.13 just came out. So let's copy this. Or actually, we can just remember it's 1.13 stable. And then let's go back to our docs here. And thanks for the tip. And it looks like we can do, to get all channels, snap info MicroK8s. Let's try this. So I've never used snap before, right? Snap info MicroK8s. Maybe? Oh, poof. There we go. Nice. Awesome. I'm learning a new package manager today. This is exciting. How many package managers do we need in Linux? The answer, all of the package managers. Okay, let's go back to our docs. So we're going to copy this command, snap install MicroK8s classic, which what does the -- classic do? Snaps are frequently updated. I don't understand what this -- classic is for. Let's do snap install -h classic here. Put snap into classic mode and disable security confinement. Okay, sure. That seems, well, if the docs are telling us to do it, we should do it. Okay, so let's paste this command. Okay, so snap install MicroK8s. Okay, you have to be root. So you need to be privileged to install Kubernetes, which makes sense. Getting Kubernetes up and running, if you've ever done like Kubernetes the hard way or like built your own cluster or debugged a cluster via SSH, you know that there's a lot of things that require privileges on your host system. John says remove the classic and it will tell you. Okay, so let's try that. Let's form our command here. So 1.13 stable, and let's get rid of classic. And I think John is alluding to that it's probably going to yell at us. Oh, and then my college band. Also, what I want to name my next dog, sudo bang bang, which means just repeat the previous command but with sudo. Error, the revision of snap MicroK8s was published using classic confinement and thus may perform arbitrary system changes outside of the security sandbox. So I think snap, it's like the whole point is it kind of keeps everything confined and isolated, so it makes it a little safer to do things like run Kubernetes on your system. And I think what this is saying is if you don't pass in the -- classic, you're not going to be able to install Kubernetes because Kubernetes wants to do things outside of that sandbox, which again makes sense. Running the kubelet is pretty much takes over your whole computer. John says, also you can drop the -stable, it's implied. I'll keep it on just because implicit things are scary for YouTubers. And let's run this. Sudo snap install MicroK8s, channel 113 stable, -- classic. And, oh, there it goes. Oh, and it's got like the really cool, like, somebody spent some time making this look really pretty. I really appreciate that. For someone who has vendored incurses like the C library directly into Go to build something like this, just so I could have like a fun, fancy little slider, I very much appreciate whenever I see other people do it. John says -- dangerous is something else. Oh my gosh. Let's see what other people are saying. Martin says maybe it should be -- unsafe, -- dangerous. I don't know. Snap is something we can get into. We're just trying here to run MicroK8s. Okay, MicroK8s is installed. And we got this like fancy little check mark, and it's like green and happy, and then it's like we're good to go. So that was pretty quick. That took like 30 seconds. It will be strictly confined eventually. We just haven't gotten to that yet. Okay, so Tim brought up a good point about MicroK8s, saying that it will be strictly confined, meaning that it will run in the confined definition of a sandbox, which I would like to find out a little bit more of what a sandbox means or implies. John says, I'm blushing. Oh my gosh, y'all are having a lot of fun today. I think it's beer time. I want to have some fun. Yay, Fridays. Okay, so let's go back to our documentation here, and then we can do MicroK8s.status. So the first time I read this, I was kind of like, that's weird. I'm used to, system cuddle status, or even, what was it, the init system. You like have a space between your commands, but there's a period in this one. And what I noticed is, and I've never seen this before in Linux before, but if I run MicroK8s and tab hint it, it does MicroK8s and there's a period at the end. And then I can tab hint again, and it tells me all of the different things I can do here. So already it's like, whoa, this is totally like a new thing, and I can tab hint in places where I used to not be able to tab hint, and it's just really exciting. And then Calvin says MicroK8s kubectl cluster info. Yeah, we're going to go through the docs, and then we'll start playing with other commands here in a second. But it says let's do status. So let's just run this and see what's going on. And let me Control C, clear my screen, and we'll do MicroK8s status. MicroK8s is running. Sorry, my microphone is like in the way here, and I don't want to move it too much. So I'm like looking at the screen y'all are looking at while typing in this screen so that I'm not staring through the microphone. So trying to multitask here. Okay, so add-ons, we don't have any add-ons. Jaeger is disabled, FluentD, GPU. Okay, so these are all of the features that we saw on the homepage. Remember earlier we saw the dashboard and Istio. These are all different, like I'm assuming different plugins that you could install with MicroK8s or easily add to your cluster. So this is exciting. If you're an Istio user or you want to get the dashboard up and running, which I think we do, that's why we poked a hole in that port, hint, hint. We totally can. Okay, so during installation, you can use the --wait ready flag to wait for the Kubernetes services to initialize. So I'm assuming if we had a bunch of plugins like installed, there'd be like operators and all kinds of stuff that would need to be eventually consistent to install things, so that this would just hang until those are done. And since we don't have anything enabled right now anyway, it went ahead and just gave us the same output we saw before. Okay, in order to install MicroK8s, make sure port 8080 is not used. Good. And if you have an AppArmor enabled, if you have AppArmor enabled, check with sudo AppArmor status. You do not have any other Dockerd installed. Okay, so this is a great point. Naturally, as we're installing Kubernetes and it says it's up and running, my brain is already going, well, how's the kubelet running? Where's the API server? Does the API server use encryption? What's the authentication mode? I have all these questions I want to figure out. And it says right here, it says, you do not have any Dockerd installed. And it's like, but Docker is such a core part of Kubernetes. How is it running containers? Is there a different container runtime? What's going on? We'll do some debugging here in a moment after we validate that the API server is running, and we can actually see how the Snap system has installed Kubernetes for us. It's pretty cool. So accessing Kubernetes. You can do MicroK8s kubectl get nodes, MicroK8s kubectl get services, and you can even alias and unalias the stuff here. Or, this is what I want to do here, we can do kubectl config view --raw, which just spits out our raw kubectl config, and then we're just going to echo that to home kube config. So, if we do this, we should now, do we have kubectl installed? We do not. Oh, command kubectl not found, but can be installed with sudo snap install kubectl. Yay. Oh, classic. We got to do classic. All right, let's see here. Okay, it's downloading. Oh, that was really fast. Okay, can we run kubectl now? Let's see. Cool. By default, kubectl will look in that this directory here, home kube config, for your kube config. And then we all know I like to alias k is equal to kubectl. And if all works, we can run our famous kget no. Poof, we have a node up and running. And look, it's running version 1.13. Yay! Kubernetes works. I can move on with my life now. So if you're an Ubuntu user and you want to play with Kubernetes, this is pretty simple to get Kubernetes up and running. So I kind of drew it out a bit and we kind of got off in the weeds a little, but you could probably come in and realistically install Kubernetes in like less than 60 seconds and get it up and running, which remarkably fast compared to like other ways of installing and getting Kubernetes up and running. I think a Kubicorn install on AWS takes about 10 minutes for everything to come up. So yeah, this is pretty impressive. Waleed says, I am wondering if that can be used as a local developed environment in strict environments. You had to install using sudo. I hope there are no longer privileged commands to use it. Waleed brings up a really great point, which is if in the future, we'll be able to use Snap as an unprivileged user, as non-root effectively, like as my local user, which is Ubuntu here, to install for my user only, which is a good question. And I think we have Tim here. I'm going to call you out, Tim, who works on the MicroK8s team, which if this is a tool you want to contribute to, I'm assuming we can find it on GitHub. If we go to code here, and you can see it's in the Ubuntu organization, and it's just called MicroK8s. And it looks like there's already 27 people contributing. So here's the raw source code, and you can see how everything is sort of built in the YAML that makes a Snap package here. John says you can do that now, but not for local users. Yeah, I think you need to be root to install it now. Which, I mean, not the best, but also tolerable, especially for a live demo. Like, I'm going to throw this EC2 instance away anyway. Okay, so we have kubectl installed, and like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of anticlimactic as far as like what the tool can do. It's just regular old Kubernetes. I can kget pods, I can run nginx -- image nginx, which again, we all know this is like one of my favorite commands that I've been running for forever. What's going on here? Oh, it yelled at me. Oh, because we're running version 1.13. Apps v1 is deprecated and will be removed in a future version. Run kubectl, run generator, run pod, create something instead. Okay, so my favorite command that I've been using for 2 years is about to be deprecated. Awesome. Anyway, now if we do kgetpo in the default namespace, poof, we have nginx up and running. And you can see here that it's running. John says 1 sudo snap login, 2 no more sudo needed for snap install. Okay, cool. So John brings up a good point. You can do sudo snap login. And then I'm assuming all that does is just remember your root credential somehow and still installs as a privileged user. Am I thinking about this correctly, or does it actually do something different than that? So anyway, let's do kdump is alias kdump equal to kubectl get all -- all namespaces. So now we can see what's all running here, and we can see, okay, cool, we have a pod running, we have a service, we have our deployment, so this is all to be expected. But if you look, this cluster is relatively empty. Usually you're at least going to be looking at a handful of things in the kube system namespace, and we don't see that here. So this is a very, very raw cluster, which is cool because that means you're getting like as pure Kubernetes as you possibly can, and you can build on top of it from there. John says pretty much, but with macaroons. With macaroons? I don't understand. You can add restart never to remove the warning. Okay, cool. So yeah, first question, how does CNI work? CNI is a part of Kubernetes that we need. It needs to be in place. I did a whole series on all the different CNI providers, or most of them, and we know we need that up and running. So how are the pods and how is the network being built if we don't have CNI running locally? That's my first question. My second question here, I do not have Docker installed. So usually what I would do is I would do this command, docker ps -a, and I would be able to actually see the containers running on my system. So without Docker, how is this nginx pod that we saw a moment ago, how is this running and where is this running? So the first thing I did is good old ps aux, and I just grepped for the words nginx. So this is where we get a little bit of like some more clues about how this is working. So it says nginx worker process and worker process nginx -g dbit off. This one is ran by root. This one is systemd, and then this is just my grep that I just did here. Waleed says, what about cry control ps? So anyway, what I wanted to demonstrate here is we can go to MicroK8s and we can tab hint, and you can actually see there's MicroK8s Docker. So if you do this, it's the Docker command line. So this is where that sandbox and that sort of isolation that Snap gives us is happening, is we're not actually installing these on our root system. We're installing these into some other place on our system, and then we can just access everything using the MicroK8s prefix. So that explains the period that we saw earlier. So I did some snooping around. I'm going to kind of bypass a lot of this because we're already an hour in. You can go to the snap directory, and you can see here we have a couple of snap packages. We have bin core, here's kubectl that we downloaded, here's MicroK8s. So let's go into MicroK8s. And I don't understand why it's 413, but we go into this directory, and look what we have here. And if you are a Kubernetes user or an operator, and if you've ever debugged a Kubernetes cluster before, you're looking at some of this stuff going, oh gosh, I know exactly what all this is. So this is the Kubernetes. This is where the magic happens. What's exciting is if we look at the API server, for instance, kube API server, this is where it gets really, really exciting. It's actually the Kubernetes API server. It's a statically linked binary. Like we really just literally installed the Kubernetes components on the system in the snap directory here, which is really exciting because I don't think I've ever actually seen Kubernetes ran this raw before. Like actually seeing somebody compile the statically linked Go binaries and just run them as is on a single system like this. And that's exactly what's going on here with Snap. All of the Kubernetes components are written in Go, so kube API server, the controller manager, kube proxy, the scheduler, even kubectl, even the kubelet, they're all written in Go. And when you compile Go, it creates a statically linked binary. And what that means is we're not referencing shared objects on our system anymore. All of the dependencies are compiled into machine code as one giant monolithic binary. So anywhere this binary exists, you can make it executable, and as long as it's compiled for your same architecture, you should be able to execute it, and you're not going to have any of those like missing libraries or incompatible shared object problems that all of us Arch Linux users are so familiar with fixing. So that's really exciting because we're getting this feature that Golang gives us, and that's how we're actually running Kubernetes on this Ubuntu server. So that's really rad. Let's see what we have here. Nobody has said anything in chat yet. Okay, so if we go back to our home directory, we can do MicroK8s, and we can start to explore a lot of things, like what is MicroK8s inspect? So this is like, I've never seen this before until MicroK8s, but it says service MicroK8s Docker daemon is running, the API server is running, kube proxy is running, the kubelet is running, which usually, and this is another thing, can we do sudo, actually, we'll just do sudo bash. Usually the kubelet runs as a systemd daemon. So we can see those here, etc system, yep, system, it's systemd system. And then there's these unit files here, and then this is usually where you would see the kubelet defined. And I wonder if that's what we're doing here. We have MicroK8s daemon, we have Docker, here's the kubelet right here. Okay, perfect. So we actually are using systemd here to watch and maintain all of these different Kubernetes components, which this is cool because we always run the kubelet this way, but I don't think I've ever seen the API server running with systemd before, and the Linux nerd inside of me just absolutely adores that. So that's really fun. So we can come back here, and we can do MicroK8s and see what else we have. Let's do inspect again and see what we have. Inspecting app armor, gathering system info, and then we have a warning here. IP tables forward policy is drop. Consider enabling traffic forwarding with this command. Building the report tarball. Report tarball is at here. Okay, so this thing spits out a tarball that you could like send in if something's going wrong with your cluster. Is MicroK8s better or worse than Minikube? That's an interesting question, Cedric. So I guess the answer to that would be what is more important to you as an engineer? I think one of the advantages that Minikube has over MicroK8s is MicroK8s is Linux only. Minikube is Windows, Mac, Linux. So right out of the box, you're getting Kubernetes a little bit in more places than you would here. And how we're able to do that is by running Kubernetes inside a virtual machine. So you get all the isolation and the security wins that you get with running VMs that we all love so much. Yay, VMs. And you can run that on virtually any operating system that supports virtual machines and get Kubernetes running. I think there are some pros and cons to having the services run with systemd. That might be a little out of scope for this episode. Somebody has a question, sorry. But yeah, overall, I think like if you were a Linux user and you want something quick and dirty and up and running, this is a really great starting point. If you're looking to develop on Kubernetes and you're a Linux user, this might also be a really good starting point. My girlfriend is writing a book right now, and I know she uses MicroK8s for all of her book examples, where she'll go in and say, okay, start a MicroK8s cluster this way, and then run this command, and you can like do this thing and follow along with us. So it's just kind of up to you and what you and your team are concerned with. I know that the Minikube, the folks who work on Minikube, it's like a Kubernetes SIG-sponsored project, whereas I think this is Ubuntu. So again, just the ownership there, if that's a concern of yours as well. Minikube might be a little more open source friendly. But again, I don't know. I've never worked on this project before. They could be very similar. Calvin says MicroK8s can be run on OS X, and I think Windows using multipass. Waleed says you probably can run MicroK8s in Windows Linux subsystem. Okay, yeah, so people are just talking about various ways of running on Windows, which I don't run Windows, so good luck if that's your thing. And if you need help, feel free to ping me and I can connect you with our Windows folks here, who I'm sure are more than happy to help you with anything you're trying to set up. Calvin is describing the 413 directory that we saw in /snap earlier. 413 MicroK8s, where'd it go? 413 is equal to MicroK8 snap revision number, or you can use the current folder to always get to the latest installed release. Okay, so it's just a revision number for that particular release. That makes sense. And then I'm assuming that current folder is a symlink, right? Did I assume that correctly? Oh, no, we want to go to MicroK8s. Yeah, so, and then current is just a symlink to whichever one you're currently using. Okay, that makes sense. And it's a good pattern that you see a lot in Linux. Martini says, what about K3.8 or K3s? You're actually not the first one to make that joke, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so Calvin shared a link. Let's pull this up and see what Calvin shared. MicroK8s on Mac OS X. Okay, can somebody add this to the doc for our friends at home? So if you want to get it running on OS X, this is how you can use multipass, and you can start and stop, and you can shell out. So this is exciting if you're an OS X user. But we've already got it running in Ubuntu, so we're just going to stay here. Current 413. Beautiful. And where were we? MicroK8s. So we have Docker, so we can actually do Docker ps -a. So, and then of course here we see, our Kubernetes pods. And the way that Kubernetes pods work is there's a naming convention, and the pod ID is what you call the actual container instance. And we're running with Docker. We just have an isolated version of Docker that is not necessarily exposed through the native command line Docker, but is exposed through MicroK8s Docker, or Docker, not Dockers. And you can see it's just regular old Docker that comes with this package. So that's really cool that we get this level of isolation with the MicroK8s snap and the way everything is set up. Well, he says K3 rocks. And Calvin says, yes, symlink, I believe, if you can find the release numbers in the snap list. Okay, cool. So let's see what else we can do here. MicroK8s enable, there's Istio cuddle, there's reset, there's status, there's stop, and there's config. What is config? Oh, that's just my cluster config here. Okay, and it's hitting itself. It's not using loopback. It's actually using, I think it's my private IP address. Let's do an if config and see what's going on. So there's a bridge. There's our Docker port, ETH0, 172.31.477, 172.31.477. Yeah, so it's actually using EC2's DNS, and it's not hitting itself on loopback or localhost 127.0.0.1. So there might be a small bit of latency concern here as every request we're reaching out, hitting DNS, resolving that, and then coming back. Although we are just using an IP address, it should be a little bit quicker, but still wondering what was the inspiration for not using localhost there. Cool. So let's play with Arch Linux. We only have a few minutes left. And it wouldn't be an episode of TGI if I didn't get myself stuck somehow. And see if we can get Kubernetes running on Arch, which will be exciting. So let's go here. Let's SSH into this bed. EC2 instance here. Oh, SSH EC2 user. We might have to Google or go look at the AMI to figure out what this is. Yes. Permission denied. Let's try Arch, and then if not, we'll try root. And if none of these work, we're gonna have to go look it up. That'll change in the okay, so Tim says that it'll start to hit loop back in 1.14. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for the update, Tim. So yeah, how do we find our user here? For the Arch Linux EC2 user. Arch Linux and EC2. So let's grep for SSH. Not in here. What is our username? Oh, you know it's a good episode when I pull up Reddit. No notifications from Reddit, please no. Okay, nothing there. Let's see if we can't find it here. So we did launch. We typed in Arch Linux. And community, we found 1, right? Yeah. Does it not say here? How do you SSH without specifying a key file? I have my bash profile, which I'm not going to open up, has SSH. I use SSH add and SSH client, so it automatically goes to a key file because I switch key files all the time. So that's just part of like my personal setup. But yeah, you can. I think by default SSH looks for home, whatever home is .ssh ID underbar RSA and ID underbar DSA by default. And then all I do is I just symlink those with a Python script I wrote, which we can look at if y'all are interested. But I think we might be spending too much time trying to find this Arch Linux user. Let's try Arch EC2 and see what happens. Yeah, use SSH agent, which is what I do. Nope. All right, so yeah, if anybody has any ideas of how we were going to get the username for this AMI, let me know. And in the meantime, let's go back here. And we can SSH into our Ubuntu one again. Exit. Oh, that's why. I'm trying to SSH from my Ubuntu one. So we actually might be able to grab this Arch Linux one if I actually use the right key. So SSH, let's try root at this. Yes. Yay! Okay, that worked. Exciting. Cool. So yeah, so let's do uname -a. Ah, yes! Arch Linux kernel. Near and dear to my heart. Okay, so in Pacman, oh, it's French. Oh, this will be interesting. Why can't you be in a language I know, like Icelandic or English? George has just got a big smiley face on it. Okay, okay. So we should be able to do Pacman -S install. I think it's snap. Impossible snap. Is it snapd? Oh no, sudo. No, we are root. So Pacman -S snapd. Impossible. Interesting. Let's go back to Google Chrome. And let's do Arch Linux snap. Installing snap on Arch. It's not in the Arch repositories. I thought it was. This might be way more trouble than it's worth. Snap is a software tool. Installation. Snapd installs a script. Install snapd or snapd git in the Arch user repositories. So yeah, this should work. Do I need to Pacman SYU update? Yeah, let's update Pacman and see what happens. Set locale language equal to, yes. Let's try that one. Oh, somebody suggested I set the language to English. And John says docs.snapcraft. So let's see here, installing on Arch Linux. Oh, wow, this is cool. Okay, so it says git clone this, cd snapd, make package -si, which this is what all that Pacman is going to do for us anyway. And then sudo systemctl enable now snapd socket. And then we symlink this, and then we hello world. All right, let's see if we can. Yes. We. Capital O. Oh my gosh, I need to get this thing out of French. Okay, Linux headers. Okay, now we're doing something. Looks right to me, and Martin, and you were there, and you went there. Okay, so we're just gonna wait for this to update. Does anybody have any questions, because we're almost out of time, about MicroK8s running Kubernetes locally, or how any of that is set up that I can answer while we're all still here and we're waiting for the system to get up and running? I really just want to try to run it on a different distro because it claims that it can run on a ton of different distros. So I figured if we can get it running on Arch, we can get it running anywhere. So this is my way of putting that to the test. But yeah, if folks have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's a lot going on in MicroK8s. There's a lot of communication between the various processes. The kubelet has to talk to the API server. The API server has to talk to the kubelet. It looks like we're doing all of that over our private IP address. And I think it generated all of the TLS information and magic stuff for us. So it is an authentic, I guess, ironclad, for lack of a better term, Kubernetes distribution, or Kubernetes release, I guess I should say. It just runs locally and is sort of catered towards local development or small one-time ephemeral use cases. I don't know if you would want to actually run MicroK8s like as a production server, which is why we opened up port 8080. I was going to try to kubectl in from my local, but I don't know if we're going to have enough time. So yeah, we can this again, import whatever, sure. GCC incurses. Okay. How do you do a we for all? This might just be me making too much noise here. Does MicroK8s use etcd? Can you add nodes? These are all great questions. So does MicroK8s use etcd? Let's open up a new tab, zoom in, control, bam, bam, and let's SSH into our Ubuntu, and let's see. Nice, some PGP keys. Yeah, this is Arch Linux, everyone. Okay, so here's our Ubuntu cluster. I guess why is it technically a cluster if it's only running one node? I don't know the rules there. What's the correct vernacular to use? Ubuntu at our public IP address, sudo bash, change directory snap, change into MicroK8s, current list, and voila, pun intended, etcd. Yes, it does use etcd. Just spam enter. Okay, so we're just gonna fly through this really quick. Thanks for the idea, Cedric. What was the other question that we had? Yes, it uses etcd, some PGP keys. No, you cannot add nodes for now. Okay, so it looks like that's the feature that they're working on. Okay, this is taking too long. I don't think we're gonna get Kubernetes up and running on Arch. You know what I can do though is I have it running at home, so I can do my next live stream I do from my house. I'll go ahead and just use my Arch Linux server that I have at home that's already nice and updated and secured and ready to use. And that way we don't have to mess around with running weird French Arch Linux and EC2. So got it working on Ubuntu. Have a feeling we know how to get it working up on Arch. We found the documentation for installing on Arch here. And I'm assuming in other Snapcraft pages you can find different distributions of how to install Snap on different systems. So yeah, you can use this really cool thing called Snap that basically runs an isolated distributed package for you. It sort of runs it away from your current user, so it keeps you a little bit like separated from what's actually going on, but that's okay because everything is nice and neatly confined into the Snap directory for whatever Snap you installed. And MicroK8s runs as statically linked binaries that run locally that you can see in your process list, and use it as private DNS to talk to itself and the other various components within. George says, thanks everyone for joining us this week. Yeah, so this is how you know I'm wrapping up the episode. And this is when folks should start saying bye. and having a good weekend, because I'll go back to like my big girl face here at the end of the episode. Thanks for joining. It's been a lot of fun. We learned about MicroK8s. We talked some about Minikube. If anybody has any questions, feel free to hit me up. If not, it looks like we have Constantinos here, who looks like they seem to have their head wrapped around MicroK8s pretty great. So I'm sure if there's any serious questions, we can connect folks if needed. John says, please reach out if you find any issues. So it looks like we can bug John about this stuff too. And we discovered there is a MicroK8s Kubernetes Slack channel. So you can go in there and ask as well. Earlier in the episode, we talked about contributing to K8s. This might be a really great way for you to get involved if you're interested in learning more about MicroK8s. I'm sure they would appreciate the help. I know we always can use more contributors in upstream Kubernetes. So Walid says, bye, have a good weekend all. Thanks, this was awesome. Calvin says you can always ask MicroK8s questions on the MicroK8s Slack channel. Cedric says, thanks for the stream. Had so much fun, especially at the end. Thanks, Cedric. Yeah, you really helped making these PGP keys a lot more exciting at the end. But yeah, again, this is Arch Linux, everyone. This is why I love it, because I hate it, right? It's like the thing. Snap is not working in WSL Windows version of Ubuntu. Okay, so it looks like Theo just tried to run the Snap or MicroK8s using WSL, which is Windows subsystem for Linux, which is basically like a fake Linux. So in FreeBSD, we call this a shim. I don't know what the Windows term for it is, but it's basically like the adapter pattern that takes all of your Linux commands and then translates those into like whatever Windows-y stuff it needs to do, so that it kind of mostly looks and feels like Linux some of the time, and that's how WSL works, which is kind of cool. David says, thanks for continuing TGIK, Kris. No problem. Other David says, thank you, Kris. Tim says, at Theo, try multipass. Martine says, thank you, Kris. Honestly, TGIK is my favorite part of the week. I love it, and the only reason we can do it is because folks like y'all join and hang out, and we get to have a good time. So yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Where is it? Like right here. So you can subscribe to TGIK. I'm Kris Nova. I'm going to go out, get out of here and head to the airport and start my weekend and finish the rest of this delicious beer that I've had one sip of that Nicholas brought to me earlier in the episode. Martin is saying bye. Vasbach says thank you. Bob says thanks, Kris. Have a great weekend. I hope you all have a great weekend as well. It's been exciting playing with MicroK8s and Linux today. I had a good time. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here. We'll see everyone. Icarus says, thanks, Kris. Have a good weekend. Yeah, I'll see everyone later. I'm out. See ya.